Good afternoon, and welcome to the Bureau of Business webinar on the 2015 economic impact of the Nebraska insurance industry. We're pleased to present this PowerPoint and webinar to you today. I also want to thank the Nebraska Insurance Federation, which was the sponsor of this economic research project, which we're going to present to you today. The webinar is presented by the Bureau of Business Research, which is part of the Department of Economics within the College of Business Administration here at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. My name is Eric Thompson. I'm an Associate Professor of Economics. I'm also the Director of the Bureau of Business Research. Before I get started with the PowerPoint and rest of the webinar, I want to point out a few other features of the webinar that we have here for you today. First of all, in the center right part of your screen, you can see a list of attendees, so the other folks attending the webinar. And then just below that, there's a chat window, which you can use to, while the webinar is going on, to chat with some of the other attendees of the webinar if you have a question to ask or a comment to make. And so we encourage you to do that. Feel free to do that during the webinar. In terms of questions of me, we also have a question and answer window in the lower center part of your screen. And at any time during the webinar, if a question occurs to you, feel free to type that in, and I'll go ahead at the end of the presentation and answer any of your questions. Obviously, if you prefer to wait till the end of the webinar, you can type in the question at that point, and then we'll answer your question. That's when we'll be answering the questions after the PowerPoint presentation. Another thing we like to do is to have some poll questions for the webinar participants at a few spots during the presentation. You can see there that the first poll question is already listed. I see we've already had a few votes. So what is the highest ranked state in terms of the concentration of insurance employment? And by concentration we mean the highest share of the state's employment is in the insurance industry. In any event, we'll have that question raised a little bit later as well, but once we have everyone's vote in, then we'll go ahead and reveal the answer to the question. So with all those points made, I'm going to go ahead and get started with the webinar, and in particular our PowerPoint presentation on the 2015 economic impact of the Nebraska insurance industry. Here's a brief outline of the PowerPoint presentation. So we're going to discuss what makes the insurance industry a key component of the Nebraska economy. And I'll just say right now that for years the Bureau of Business Research has argued there's sort of three key sectors to the Nebraska economy. One, of course, is the agricultural production complex in our state. But in addition to that, there's also the transportation and logistics industry, if you think about our large trucking and rail industries. And then the third key component of the Nebraska economy, of course, is our insurance carriers industry, which have been a key component of our economy, of course, for a very long time. So we'll talk about some additional evidence and facts about that. Then we'll move to the economic impact of the Nebraska insurance industry. So how is it impacting our economy? Welcome back to the webinar on the Nebraska insurance industry and its economic impact. Sorry for those technical difficulties. As I was saying earlier, the outline of our presentation is as follows. We'll be talking about what makes the insurance industry a key component of the Nebraska economy, what its economic impact is for Nebraska. Obviously, if you have an economic impact, there's tax revenues generated along with that economic impact. And then we'll also look at the contribution of the insurance industry to brain gain in our state. So let me go ahead and start talking about the first topic. What makes the insurance industry a key component of the Nebraska economy? Well, the first thing to keep in mind is the insurance industry is very much a high-wage industry. So if you look at insurance, the insurance carriers component of the industry, and that's a very big part of the insurance industry here in Nebraska, the average wages in 2015, last year for which we have full data available, was $71,000. Now that might sound like a lot, and indeed it is. If you look at the average private sector wage in Nebraska, it's something like $42,000 to $43,000. So 71,000 is substantially higher, more than 50% higher than the average. So this is an industry that generates high wage jobs in Nebraska. And it's also a growing industry. So here I've got a table, a lot of numbers here, but basically we've listed the average wages and the growth in wages in some of the key industries in the Nebraska economy. Of course, we have insurance carriers and related activities, aka the insurance industry, but we also have education and health services, we have professional and business services, we have information, which is a lot of technology and broadcasting type businesses, and we have manufacturing. First thing you'll note is there's a number of high wage industries here, but insurance carriers and related activities is the highest wage industry. It's also the fastest growing industry in terms of wages. So if you look at insurance carriers, for example, annual average growth in wages over the last 5 years is 3.7%. That's well above the rate of inflation. You can see in manufacturing it's just 2.2%. Even in professional and business services, it's a little bit higher than that. So not only does the insurance industry, especially insurance carriers, provide high wage employment, but that gap seems to be growing because wages are growing faster in that industry than in Nebraska overall and in other key sectors of our economy. Now, I'd like to go back to that first poll question again. So what is the highest ranked state in terms of the concentration of insurance employment? In other words, looking at these 4 states that are rather famous for their insurance industries, in which state is the largest share of employment in the insurance industry? So I'll go ahead and give you all a few minutes or a few more seconds to cast your vote. Okay, well, there's a partial hint on this slide, but it's still not the whole answer. So go ahead if you haven't voted and think about how you'd like to vote, what your answer would be. I'd like to talk about one other key aspect of especially the insurance carriers part of the insurance industry, and that aspect is the insurance industry is a key part of our economic base. In other words, it's an industry that, sure, it serves the local economy, but you think about insurance carriers, they're actually serving the national and in some cases the international economy. They've got customers located around the nation, and they earn revenue from those customers that supports a lot of direct employment in Nebraska insurance carriers. And so it's a key part of the economic base of our state, in addition to being a high wage and growing wage industry. And that's why we say that the insurance industry is such a key component of the Nebraska economy. Now, there were 33,300 jobs in the insurance industry in 2015. And to give a partial answer to the poll question, insurance employment is 84% higher than you would expect in the state the size of Nebraska. In other words, we have 84% more employment per job, more insurance employment relative to total employment than the average state in the nation, so almost double. So that is quite a concentrated industry in our state. However, as you can see in this table, there is one state that has even a larger concentration of its employment in the insurance industry, broadly defined insurance carriers, but also brokerages and other related services. You can see Connecticut is 1.96. The location quotient shows the relative concentration of the industry in each state. So Connecticut literally almost does have twice as much employment in this industry as the average state. Nebraska is 1.84 or 84% above. And then after Connecticut and Nebraska, there's quite a drop-off in Iowa, Minnesota, and Rhode Island's another important state for the insurance industry. So the industry is especially concentrated here in Nebraska. And certain parts of Nebraska particularly so. So we've recreated that same location quotient idea, which shows you how concentrated an industry is within an economy in terms of employment. And what you see here is that in Lincoln, its location quotient is a value of 2.19 compared to 1.84% 1.84 statewide. That means that there's more than twice as much employment in the insurance industry in this Lincoln metropolitan area than there is nationwide. That share is up to almost 2.5 times as much concentration when it comes to the Omaha metropolitan area. And even the rest of the state has the same share of its employment roughly as in the insurance industry as the nation as a whole. So particularly our largest metropolitan areas, we see a concentration in the insurance industry. More evidence that's a key component of our economy. Now let's get now to economic impact. So we talked about those 33,300 jobs in the Nebraska insurance industry. That's a great way to think about the direct economic impact of the industry. How many jobs are located specifically in insurance carriers, brokerages, and other related firms? But that's not the whole story when it comes to economic impact. We know that these economic-based industries that bring new money into the state also support additional employment due to the multiplier impact. So what do we mean by the multiplier impact? Well, that's the other jobs that are found at businesses in other industries, so throughout the economy, whether it's retail, whether it's banking, whether it's construction and housing. It's the jobs that are found in Nebraska in other industries due to the economic impact of Nebraska's insurance industry. The multiplier occurs, first of all, because insurance businesses do need to buy supplies. They do need to buy services from other Nebraska businesses supporting employment in those other businesses. And just as importantly, the employees of the insurance industry, they're going to spend their paychecks in Nebraska by and large at businesses of all types. Think of everything that people spend their paychecks on, whether it's housing, healthcare, recreation, retail, restaurants, whatever it might be. All of those industries benefit from that. So we estimated all of those multiplier jobs and added them to the direct employment of 33,300 jobs in 2015 to get the total economic impact. And the total employment impact was nearly 60,000 jobs in 2015. We also did that in terms of overall impact on sales of Nebraska businesses, and that's the first point you see in this slide. For 2015, Nebraska insurance industry spending did add $14.24 billion in sales for the Nebraska economy. Again, that includes both the direct sales and the multiplier sales. That's another evidence of the size of the impact on the state economy. Now, the impacts were largest in the Omaha area, but significant impacts are found throughout the state of Nebraska. Here's another way to look at economic impact, and in particular, to look how economic impact has evolved over the last 5 years. What you see is that in terms of output, also known as business sales, the economic impact grew almost 40% during that 5-year period. So there was a big increase in premium revenue and resulting economic impact in our state's economy during that 5-year period. There also was an increase in labor income impacts. Again, that's the wages earned by insurance industry employees and also the wages earned due to the multiplier impact. That labor income impact grew by about 25% just over the last 5 years, excuse me. Well, now, and I can see some people already have answered the question, we're ready to ask our second question regarding the Nebraska insurance industry, second poll question. So we'd like to know what the webinar participants think the answer is to this question. Does the Nebraska insurance industry primarily create jobs for college graduates, high school graduates, community college graduates, or all of the above? It is a very high-wage industry. Does that mean it primarily creates jobs for college graduates, or do Nebraskans at all education levels have opportunities in the insurance industry? We'll go ahead and talk about the answer a little bit later. Feel free to answer the poll question when you have a moment. Before we talk about that and the brain gain issue in general, I do want to talk about the tax revenue impact. So we saw a pretty substantial economic impact. Obviously, when you have new economic activity, you're also going to have a tax revenue impact, and we estimated that. So for 2015, we estimated that the Nebraska insurance industry generated over a $500 million impact on state and local taxes and fees in our state. So a little over $500 million in tax revenue. Now, part of that was direct taxes paid by insurance companies in terms of the taxes and fees that they pay to the Nebraska Department of Insurance. But as you can see in this table, there were also a lot of other tax revenue generated for state and local government, including almost $100 million in income taxes for the state, nearly $250,000 in state and local sales taxes, and also property taxes. So a tax impact to match the economic impact that we saw earlier. And lastly, I'd like to talk about brain gain, because I know this is an important issue for Nebraskans, certainly something the state has looked at and working on for decades. How do we avoid brain drain? How do we keep young Nebraskans in the state after they finish their schooling, later in their careers? How do we keep them here and make sure that the state economy is benefiting from the very high level of investment that Nebraskans make in education? So that's known as the brain drain, the loss of those skilled and talented people to other states. We argue that the insurance industry in Nebraska plays an important role in fighting the brain drain. In fact, it contributes to what we'd call a brain gain. And the reason for that is it offers high-wage employment, and the insurance industry also has a lot of new job openings available every year. And many of these are filled by Nebraskans with post-secondary education, so the industry really is effective at retaining and attracting more educated young people to the state as well. Now, why does the industry have so many job openings? Obviously, that might be partly because the industry is growing and adding employment on net, and obviously that creates new job openings. The projections that we're working with from the Nebraska Department of Labor suggest that the insurance industry should be able to create about 170 net new jobs per year, and obviously that creates a lot of job openings. But the primary source of job openings is due to retirements. So 33,300 workers, that's a large workforce. Going to be people of all ages among that 33,000. Some people are going to be near retirement age. And indeed, just through the normal course of people living their lives and going through their careers, you're going to have quite a few people retiring every year from the large employment base in the Nebraska insurance industry. Our analysis, based on data developed by the U.S. Department of Labor, suggests that in an industry like insurance, about 4.1% of the workforce separates in a category called other separations. This primarily means through retirement. And if you apply that rate to our Nebraska insurance industry, you see it creates almost 1,400 job openings a year. So if you add those to the net new jobs, you're around 1,540 job openings every year in high-wage jobs created by our Nebraska insurance industry. So this is creating a lot of opportunity for brain gain to retain and attract Nebraskans in our state, especially young Nebraskans. Now, what kind of jobs are being created? Well, we know they're high-wage jobs, but here we can see some evidence of the degrees or the level of education that's a good match for the job openings in Nebraska's insurance industry. So these are the top 5 occupations in the industry based on the education level of the typical job holder in that occupation. And what you can see is that 2 of the 5 are jobs that are appropriate for people who hold whose highest level of education is a high school diploma. 2 of the 5 jobs typically require a bachelor's degree, and 1 of the 5 top occupations could go to someone with a bachelor's degree or some college, which includes people who maybe didn't finish college, also includes people with associate's degrees. So the point of this is to show that these job opportunities that are being created are actually applicable to a lot of Nebraskans. It's not just college graduates. So there's high wage opportunities out there for people at a variety of education levels. And that's just more evidence of how the Nebraska insurance industry contributes to brain gain in our state. Well, those were the main points we wanted to make, highlights of our report. We wanted to see at this point what questions you have. We certainly want to thank you for taking the time to participate in our webinar. And I see that no questions were typed during the presentation, but if anyone will wait a few moments here, if anyone would like to type in a question, be happy to answer. So I want to thank you again for participating in our webinar, and we certainly enjoyed presenting it to you and enjoyed the opportunity to conduct this research and share it with the industry and with the public in Nebraska. I would also mention, please feel free to follow the Bureau of Business Research's research in general on a regular basis, whether we're studying the insurance industry or other important aspects of our state's economy. You can see how to follow us on social media, whether it's LinkedIn, Facebook, or Twitter. And you can also subscribe to our newsletter to simply send your email address, your preferred email address, to bbr@unl.edu, and we'll make sure we've added you to our monthly email list. Now I did see one additional question. Several have come up now. The first question is, what is the prospect for young talent entering the field? Well, I think, obviously for young people throughout the economy, it's always challenging to get your career started. So I'm always going to recognize that getting started in a professional career is a challenging exercise. But for young people interested in actuarial science, interested in other occupations within the insurance industry, this is a great state to have those interests because of the opportunities. We have not just one large employer, but a multitude of large companies of national scope in the insurance carrier sector, for example, with potential to start a career or to change employers. So it's a good place for a young person at a variety of education levels. I think that's what we found in our research. The second question is, how secure does the Bureau feel about retaining our insurance group? Well, that's always a hard question. I think that we have several advantages for retaining the insurance industry. The first of all is, like a lot of industries, there are a lot of specialized skills required of workers in the insurance industry, and it can be challenging to find places with an abundant supply of those workers. So one big advantage Nebraska has, and obviously Connecticut, a few of the other states we talked about have, is that skilled workforce that's ready and available. We're also adding to that workforce through some of the education programs that we have. We have very strong education programs in a lot of relevant insurance occupations. Obviously, the insurance industry has also been a big part of our state's economy for a long time. So I think to some extent, the state of Nebraska has been careful to make sure it has a strong environment for businesses in the insurance industry, although there's always debate on that topic and room for improvement. But I think that's a significant advantage. So, we have a cluster here. We have the skill. I think that is helpful. What factors make Connecticut and Nebraska such a prominent place for the insurance industry? Well, I would refer to my previous answer. Again, it's at least a sensitive and well thought out environment in the state in terms of policy. It is, there's a lot of expertise at the executive level and at the management level on how to run insurance companies in our state. There's also entrepreneurial talent in the sector. And again, there's that skilled workforce that is challenging to find in any professional industry, and we have an abundance in our state, and I think Connecticut can say that as well. Fourth question, was the investments of assets that insurance companies own included in the economic impact? No, it was not. So we were focused on the average annual operating activity of insurance companies themselves, not so much activity on related investments. Fifth question. There are a number of national insurance companies that are domiciled in Nebraska. I'm going to have to click on this to see the full question. Can you talk about why that is and what we can do to help grow their operational presence in the state? I'm going to have to confess I can't provide a good answer to that question. I'm sorry. Just as we did the research, we didn't look at issues that helps me to provide a strong answer to that question. I'm sorry about that, Jennifer. That, I think, is the last question in case any additional questions come up. I also would mention one other thing. That we are having upcoming webinars. The next webinar is going to be on March 31st. We'll look at the issue of highway spending and how that contributes to economic growth and the quality of life around the country, with implications here for the state of Nebraska. So I'd encourage you to sign up for that webinar as well. Again, we'll wait a minute if there are any additional questions. Well, thank you again for participating in our webinar today.